Hello, and welcome to Positive Fandom. I'm your host, Mmmm. Today, I'm joined by Dieter Bastian, all the way from Saarbrücken, Germany. Hello, Dieter. How are you today?
Hello, Arun. Nice for sending me the invite to talk about one of our favorite series of this year, probably, which came a little bit out of nowhere.
It certainly did, Dieter. And of course, you're referring to this mega hit anime series on Netflix called Arcane. And you were the one who told me about this series, right?
Yeah. So let me just first set a little bit the stage for our review of the first episode of Arcane. Do you know the game League of Legends? Have you ever played it? What is your knowledge of the game in general?
And my knowledge of the game is limited. I've heard of the game of League of Legends, but I have never played the game League of Legends. Have you, Dieter?
No. The first time I heard of League of Legends was from a worker colleague who is a big League of Legends player, but I'm more of a console player, and the game is not available on console, and I'm not a multiplayer gamer. But he played League of Legends for a long period of time, and through him I knew about the game. But I didn't know how big the game actually is. The first time I could measure how big this game was when I was stumbling around looking for some concert tickets. I don't know what it was anymore. And I stumbled across tickets for a League of Legends event up to $100 and more. And I thought, what is the hell is going on here? League of Legends? Because they are really playing big tournaments with all over the world. And that was the first time I was really get the size of this MOBA game, and considering the game itself, it was surprising to me that they did a series to it, because when you look at the game itself, first, people in the comments, we're not League of Legends expert. If we say something stupid or wrong, let us know in the comments. Considering when you watch the League of Legends game, it's not a story based game in general. You have, of course, you have the characters, they have different methods or skills, and you just arena based fight against each other. But it's not like you would say a Resident Evil, perhaps. You have a story, you go to a mansion, you have to find something out, where you have some sort of a story, or Last of Us, where you could already have a story to put into live action or something like that. But League of Legends is in general not a story based game where you could think of it, oh, let's do an animated show for League of Legends. Of course, they developed lore for the characters itself, but the game in general is not a story based game. So that was a surprise to me, to do a live, an animated version of the game. And as far as I know, the show itself is a prequel to the universe itself. So the universe, the characters in the universe that you are playing are far more advanced. So I jump just a little bit ahead of it. Have you seen all episodes? Not that I take anything away.
Yes, you mean of the Arcane series? Yes, I have
Yeah.
seen all the episodes. Yes.
So the last scene in the movie, the weapon that Jinx is using is actually her weapon when you would play the game.
Oh.
So people who are watching the show and playing the game know, of course, a little bit more than the two of us how characters will evolve or what weapon they will get at some point. So the series actually is a prequel series. Or the character of Silco, for example, does not exist in the game. So he is not a playable character. And as far as I know, there are about 150 playable characters or champions, as they are called. So they would have really have a lot of characters to draw from. But my knowledge is, I have never played the game, but for me it was very surprising to get this series. and I just seen the trailer and I thought, well, this animation looks really cool. I will look into it. And so I would say, let's delve into the first episode.
Absolutely. And it's very important that you gave us that introduction, Dieter, because while this game is obviously inspired by League of Legends, you don't need to have seen the game or played the game to enjoy the series, right?
And that's always a big plus. Of course, my worker colleague told me about that he discovered Easter eggs because he knows the game. And that is great. But like you said, you don't have to play the game to enjoy the series as a whole.
Yes. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So it's so interesting. And as I said, you were the person who introduced me to go ahead and go on Netflix and watch this series. And I'm so glad I did. It's described in so many ways, like an action, adventure, drama, fantasy, science fiction.
Hybrid. A little bit of steampunk, a little bit of
Yes.
cyberpunk is in it.
And I have to say, Dieter, it's maybe one of the best things I've seen in so long. First of all, what I was going to say is, obviously we know this is an animated series, and we have incredible music by a group called Imagine Dragons. And they created a theme song, or maybe it was a song they already had, but it's being used in this series. And it certainly does set an exciting tone for the series.
Yeah. And considering the title track, I had a little bit difficulty to get into it, but like a TV show, if you hear it more often, you get used to the track. And the first episode is, I believe, called "Welcome to the Playground," and this is a song in the first episode 2 that is played when they are reaching Zorn, the city of Zorn in the lower end of the ridge spectrum.
It certainly is. And we, throughout this series, and of course today we're talking about that first episode, but throughout this series, it's just a wonderful soundtrack that accompanies this incredible animation. And everything was well thought out. Even the when they're playing the title song, I think it's called My Enemy or something like that.
Correct.
What was so interesting about it was that they showed us stills of the characters as they were in development, and they're not painted characters. They're kind of,
statues, more like statues, something like that.
Yes, exactly, like a 3D rendering of them, and they don't have any color on them. And I think that's very interesting that they chose to do that because, of course, we're going to see these characters evolve and turn into, and they're very complex. There's absolutely one of the best character developments I've ever seen in a TV series, let alone an animated show. So what I really liked about it was that we got to see, many of the main characters. And in addition to that, although we don't know it yet, we get to see some of them at different stages of their life. And, whoever created this series really wanted you to understand the characters' background and their backstories, but also the sort of the politics involved in this world and how the Arcane fits into it. And so I think that they took a great deal of care, even in this introductory music and yes, the opening credits. I've never seen anything that looks that good, Dieter, for something like this.
That was the first thing that took me really by surprise. I watched the trailer, of course. The trailer looked great too, but immediately when the show starts, for me, this was next level animation that I always was waiting for, I would say. I watched some animated stuff from DC, even the Masters of the Universe, the new series. But compared to Arcane, they look like just Saturday morning cartoons. It is brutal to say that, but for me, it is true. Arcane is on another level. But I can tell you, I didn't find out anything about the cost of the show. I don't know how much they spent on an episode for Arcane. I have no knowledge about the budget, which is of course always a factor to factor in how good the show will look. But Arcane has definitely his own style, you know. And like you said, the characters are so great. So even if the next season will take 1 or 2 years to make, I won't forget these characters, because other series you watch and you have to think what was the last thing that was happening, which were the names of the characters. But Arcane stuck with me, will stick with me for a longer time, you know. So
Yes, and, you were talking about how much it costs. I also did not look up the price of this, production,
I
but
couldn't
what
find out any information about it. I tried to find out something, but I can't tell you anything about the budget of the show, which would really interest me. How much did the show cost, and how long did they take to animate it like this, uh, uh, like they did with the show, you know?
well, I don't know how much it costs, and I'm not even gonna pretend that I could calculate how much it would cost, but animation of this level, honestly, I think it was maybe took about 4 years because
Yeah, yeah,
of the quality of what we're seeing, in it, and they just there are no errors in this animation at all. The detail
no,
is perfect. The scales are perfect. We still and honestly, from what I've heard and seen in some articles, that this particular animated series has had greater viewership than The Mandalorian,
oh
which was a huge hit.
yeah,
Honestly, it's incredibly visibly pleasing, and even the part where they talk about how it's a Netflix production, where they have this sort of spinning record player,
yeah, great.
and
And you see, when you see Y and Jinx on the record, it's
yes,
a
and it's
little
drawn.
detail that I picked up later, you know, at a second or third episode.
I have to tell you, it's the pride that they had in this production. This might be Netflix's best production. This might be their greatest production, and shows the potential of what they can do if if all the conditions are met. And also, I did want to mention that I'm a huge fan of steampunk, and we immediately get a sense of steampunk even from that record player part.
Yeah,
But as soon as I saw that it was steampunk, I personally knew that I was going to enjoy this production visually because I love the fact that it has that steampunk vibe. I love it, and honestly, I've always been a fan of steampunk. Um, are you a fan of steampunk? Just out of curiosity.
uh, I wouldn't say I'm a big fan or I have the biggest knowledge of it, but like you said, for me it has elements of that genre in it. But the visuals alone, of course, couldn't carry it alone. It is the story combined with the visuals that makes Arcane so good, as it actually is. Because if I just watch here on the IMDb, it has a rating at the moment of 9.3 out of 10,
Wow.
considering the IMDb rating, and it still holds up on Rotten Tomatoes with 100% from the critics and 97 from the audience, which
Wow,
is
that's spectacular, Dieter.
yeah, which is
That's
insane. So I would suggest we delve a little bit into the first episode, because it starts with a war which we
yes.
actually don't know anything about at the
Yeah,
beginning.
and I think that when they chose to first of all, they hit you over you're hit over the head with it. There's nowhere you can go. You know that this bright red hue that they're
Yeah,
showing you, that it means blood has been spilled. And we see these jutting sort of buttresses of a I guess a bridge, and
yeah,
the stoic faces looking down on what's happened. And we're presented with these two it's obviously it feels like there's been some sort of battle, and we see
yeah,
smoke and
yeah. We see
we
some
kind of
the first enforcers, but we don't know what kind of people they are. That they are enforcers from Pildover. We
yes,
don't
we don't
know
know
anything.
whose side is which.
No. No.
And so, but it isn't necessarily the battle that seems to draw our attention, because we see this sort of incredible sight of these two young girls, and they're
Yeah.
terrified, and they're walking alone through the smoke of the battlefield. And as these two scared girls walk, we see all the destruction on the bridge. And clearly, we see them gasp as they come across a sight, discovering something that they were not expecting to see, right, Dieter?
Yeah. I would suggest it was their parents, but I could be wrong about about it. And we learn about, or we see the first time we see the character of Venda, which takes the two under his wings.
And what's really interesting about this scene, Dieter, is that it looks like, Vander was there perhaps when, let's say, hypothetically, the girl's parents were killed. And
Yeah.
it is very traumatic. And just the look on these two girls' faces, in fact, they're the only ones who have, like, say, maybe a different color from that red that we see.
Yeah.
And we can see the fear that they have. And I wondered for a second as I watched this, whether or not Vander was involved in the situation where their parents died. And of course we learn, inadvertently, he was, in a sense, they're on the scene at a time when this battle is sort of drawing to an end. And we see enforcers, we see these, like you
Yeah.
said, in these incredible steampunk outfits that look amazing.
Yeah.
And Vander kind of is holding, he walks away from the scene, off the bridge, away from the scene, holding the two girls in his arms, or maybe just one of them in his arms.
And
And
he drops his gauntlets for the final time, which will become, when we skip a little bit ahead, the weapons that Vi will use later.
definitely, and that implication of, he's putting his weapons down, the fight is over, and now he's going to be doing something else. And of course, that other duty that he's tasked himself with is to take charge of these, become,
Yeah.
in charge of these two young girls. Why do you suppose he decided that he was going to take these two young girls under his wing?
Perhaps he felt a little bit of guilt himself, like you said, that he was perhaps involved somehow with the murder of perhaps their parents. And it was nice. Powder did sing the song at the beginning when they walked across the bridge. That was a nice
Yes,
moment too.
that beautiful lullaby of asking for a penny, sir. If you can spare a penny. And she inadvertently is singing a song, and I'm not going to say she's completely oblivious to what's happened, but she's not quite understanding what happened
Yeah,
because she
yeah,
is still quite young.
yeah.
But her older sister, who probably is about 12 maybe, in that
Around that,
scene,
yeah.
clearly knows what has happened and is just shocked and devastated. And that lullaby is such a stark contrast to, the carnage that has happened on her innocence, just, singing during a time of destruction, really gives it so much substance, and just shows you the innocence of children. And I think that if anything, the series does is just shows the hope that a child would have, in no matter what circumstances they're dealt with in life. A lot of this has to do with hope, doesn't it, Dieter?
Yeah, certainly it does. And the show did immediately hook you with the beginning of it, you know. And then we have the nice transition after the opening credits into our first look at Piltover. We see the great landscape when we see Vi and Powder again, but not alone. There are about two other guys with them, and they are Milo and the other one. Let me just check. I have was Clegger, I believe. Clegger was his name, and they're on
Yes.
the rooftops of Piltover, and you get that nice, great animation about that nice city, nice contrast considering the red we got a little bit earlier. Now we have nicest weather, and we see a probably really prosperous town that they
We
are
certainly
on the rooftops.
do. Now that the girls are, it's as you said, there was a time jump and they're actually scaling walls and climbing. And
Yeah,
once they get to that peak and they look over this beautiful city,
beautiful.
and
Yeah,
it's just so gorgeous. And the city has a steampunk feel. There's dirigibles flying over, and you can get the sense of prosperity and how well the city is doing, and
yeah,
how it seems like a special place no one wants for anything. It's everyone has everything they need, and there's no reason to feel there's no neglect. And seeing the children kind of look over the city and almost realizing that it's not theirs. In other words, they're looking at it, but it's in longing and not as if they belong to it, because they don't. They're there to do a heist, right, Dieter?
yeah. They're ready to rob some people of their belongings that they could sell uh, down in their area. So they
Exactly.
climb across the rooftops, and they're doing a heist in an apartment which we at that moment don't know who's the owner of the apartment. We only see some tech stuff, and I think Powder said it seems to be an inventor, and they put up some stuff in their bag, and they find some, let me just say, magic crystal balls.
Yes. And it is very exciting because I have a feeling that when they do enter this room, this is one of the most amazing rooms they've ever entered to
Yeah,
in their entire life. And even I was kind of blown away by how many incredible pieces of machinery
yeah,
and inventions and gadgets were in this room. And, there's even food in there, where Powder
yeah.
kind of,
Nice sandwich. Nice
yeah, she's
sandwich.
got a
Yeah,
sandwich, she's got, all sorts of fun things,
yeah,
and she comes across these balls, these crystals,
yeah.
whatever they
Oh,
are, and I thought
yeah.
maybe it was like a jeweler's place, but it turns out that these aren't ordinary gemstones, are they, Dieter?
No, as far as I know, they are filled with magic. Let me say just magic. And the inventor is trying to put magic and science together, as far as I understand the lore of League of Legends. And the owner comes back, which we at that moment don't get to see. And they're trying to escape, but one of those little crystal balls gets loose, and there's a little bit of an explosion happening.
Yes, and it was so unexpected, right
Yeah,
when, the group of 4 seem to feel comfortable, they're throwing stuff in bags, they're eating sandwiches. The penthouse owner has returned suddenly, and the kids block the door and grab anything as when they can. And one of the children, Powder, drops
yeah.
one of these crystal
This,
balls,
this was
and there's all of a sudden the most unexpected thing happens. There's this enormous explosion
explosion.
that
Yeah,
nearly kills them all.
yeah, correct, correct. It probably
And
could have in another apartment, you know.
absolutely, and I mean, what were you expecting to see when those spears dropped? I know I wasn't expecting to see an explosion of that magnitude.
No, but the only thing we got from it that we know now, oh, those crystal balls are not too tampered with if you don't know what you are doing.
Yes, and that's probably why they were in that special box
Yeah,
that
correct,
Powder
correct.
managed
But
to
there
open.
I think in the box there were about 12, but there were only, I think, 8 or 6 in it. But there were places for 12 or something like that. Probably the other ones were already in his laboratory, you know, where he they tried to find something out. So our 4 guys pack their bags as soon as they can, and they flee. And we have that great chasing sequence when the enforcers go after them with their special weapons that they have, those nice triple 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 ropes or what they are throwing. So they have their nice weapons, and we see a little bit more of Piltover when they race through the streets to get away from the enforcers.
Definitely. And, once again, you can see the stark contrast of the beauty of this
Yeah,
city and how perfect it is and how everything is, in great condition. And the children are running through the streets and these enforcers are pursuing them. And they're really running for their lives. They don't want to get caught
yeah.
here. This could be
No,
very bad for them. They managed to run away into the sewer system. And I
through
think
through
that
that little slide
yes.
immediately into the garbage.
And that it's so sad because obviously they live in an underground world where they live is just not the same level of
Yeah,
perfection, not the same level of opportunity or even healthy environment for the children. And this is why they're doing this heist. They're doing this heist
yeah,
because throughout the show, they keep saying, well, no one in Piltover is going to miss this. They want for nothing. I mean, look at they're not counting pennies the way we are. And you realize that they've grown up, very poor and very disadvantaged. And they're doing this heist just to kind of improve their lives a little. So, the interpretation of why they're stealing, it's a little different because you can't tell right away that they were brought up in such poor conditions, right, Dieter?
no, you because we at that moment we didn't have seen Zorn, the city part that they are living in, and they think they have fled the scene, got away with it with their loot, but unfortunately they ran into a little street gang, and another fight is breaking out between the street gang and themselves. And this was the first for me great fight action sequence, which was done just beautiful with slow motion
Oh,
stuff.
it was
It was
stunning.
stunning. It was absolutely stunning. And then we got Powder who got the loot from them, but she was confronted by one of the street gangs, and she's gotten away on her own, but has to throw the loot into the sea. And unfortunately, we did see her putting together her first one of her weapons, but the weapon didn't work that she put together. So in the end, all they got was was getting their ass kicked, or the other street gang getting their ass kicked, and no loot to tell of.
And, this was an impossible decision for little Powder to have to make.
Yeah,
Here she is running for her life with this stuff, and she knows what's at stake and what they've done. And she also knows that some members of the group aren't very happy with her
no,
because,
especially
she's
Milo.
yes, and I almost feel like it's a little unfair because she is still just a child, and even if they were maybe a little more advanced than her at that same age, this is, very unfair for a young child to have to make a decision like this. And, the fact that she, is even doubting whether she should be doing this is an indication she probably shouldn't be, but because she has no choice in this matter,
Yeah,
she
and
she
she's
is
of course looking up to Vi, of course.
She doesn't wanna disappoint her sister, and
Yeah,
her sister is doing this for her, probably, just to so that her sister so Powder can have a better opportunity, and,
yeah,
just this disappointment of, doing this heist and for it to turn out in this manner, was not what Vi was counting on, and they're actually very scared about what's gonna happen now as they go back into their home, which is even deeper levels down, isn't it,
yeah.
Dieter?
And then we hear that song, the playground song, and we get to see, just like we saw Piltover, we get to see Zorn a little bit more with all the different inhabitants, residents of this part of the city. And we make our last stop, which is the bar that Venda owns.
Yes, and, that scene where they're going down in the elevator,
Yeah,
Dieter
it was
reminded
great.
me very much it was first of all, it was fantastically done, and
Yeah,
this
yeah.
reminded me
The
so much of
lighting,
a game that I played called BioShock Infinite, where
Bioshock. Yeah, correct.
are
Bioshock
you
3.
familiar with
Yeah,
the game, Dieter?
yeah. It was not all, but I believe the first one I played.
Mhm.
Exactly, Bioshock. Yeah,
And it had a steampunk feel, and in particular in BioShock Infinite, there you start off where you're at sort of like at Piltover. It looks like Piltover.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
as you play the
Exactly.
game, you go deeper into sort of lower levels, and you can see how people are living in these deplorable conditions. And it's such a dichotomy to the beautiful city above, but below are where most of the people live in and don't have the advantages. And I think that when you choose to show something like this, it's very interesting. Honestly, Dieter, there were times when I was watching this animated series and I forgot that it was an animated series, because the way that they presented this, it feels like a movie. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like you're watching an animated a cartoon or anything like that. This story is a serious story. And, we can actually see situations here, just like real life situations. True, it has magic in it, but there's so much of it that, strikes a chord with, the desperate situations of so many people, even today, who are living like that, that I thought it was incredibly sensitive and a mature story to tell, even though it involves children.
Yeah. And the cinematic feeling is always for me gets heightened if you do a widescreen aspect ratio. That always gives everything a little bit more of a cinematic feel. So that helped too. And now, since we're in the last stop, we finally get to meet Venda a little bit more, and that he has the final say in his pub. What goes on there?
He
with
really
the little
does. And
with
he's
the little back and forth where one of his customers didn't get the right payment.
Yeah, and we get a sense that Vander, by stepping in this way and by kind of taking a role when even when he's not wanted, is clearly somebody who's trying to keep the peace and also trying
Yeah,
to make everybody's lives better. Because you certainly wouldn't want people coming in there and taking advantage any more than they already have of the people who are living in these sort of deplorable conditions. And he calls the area the lanes, and it's a very sad looking place where it's almost like they're living, I'm
the
not going to say
last
in a
stop,
garbage
like
pile, but
like the bar is called, the last stop.
yes, it really is. And ironically, at this point, by the time the young children come back to their home, and I guess near Xander's
Yeah.
establishment, everyone is talking about the heist, and it's the talk of the underworld and of Piltover.